Hi, my name is Cliff Mountainer. Welcome to Kelby Training. Today, I'm going to empower you with the skills necessary to go after a style of your own in wedding photography. There is a ton of competition out there. You know how many photographers there are out there. You know how many photographers there are in your market. The only way to differentiate yourself is to go after a style, something different, something unique, something creative. And in my opinion, the only way to do that is to enhance your skills. Get the skills necessary to go after your style. I mentioned that exposures have to be completely innate. And I also mentioned earlier that when our backgrounds are darker than our subject, the overall situation is a little bit darker, we need to take our exposure compensation when in an automatic mode, such as aperture priority, which is what I use primarily. When I look at this scene, I'm looking for this wonderful highlight right on her face. As soon as I see this, and I see the darker area in the background, instinctively, I take my camera, dial it down a little bit, and right now I probably start at about minus 2/3 of a stop. In order for me to capture this highlight on her face, okay, and capture this scene exposed properly. If I was 0.0 with my exposure compensation, the camera's meter would read the entire scene, and that darker area would fool my meter and tell my meter that we don't have enough light to take the picture, and it would slow the shutter down, slowing down the time that the light is hitting the sensor and overexposing my subject, which right now is Ashley with this highlight. Before I put the camera to my face, I automatically see the dark area behind there. I'm going to take my exposure compensation. I'm going to probably start at minus 0.7, which is minus 2/3. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take a frame. I'm going to glance very quickly. I don't sit there and chimp. I don't sit there and look forever. I take the frame, I glance at it, boom, glance, adjust from there, and continue to shoot. And I work the situation. I'll bob, I'll weave, and I'm just looking for a light. Now, if I had a groom in the photograph, I'd be looking for interaction between them. Maybe just some hand play, just kind of goofing around with each other. The entire time, I'm making picture after picture after picture. And nothing's going to change. It's going to be a beautiful scene, and I'm going to get that gorgeous light right on her face. Thanks for coming out, guys. Today, I want to talk to you about the essentials of creativity, basically. In wedding photography, I think it's essential, no pun intended, to have vision and to see light and to see within your mind's eye. And I'm going to give you some hints today on how to do that, how to do it instinctively, okay? The essentials of creativity. First of all, anything having to do with my work, the single most important element for me is decisive moments. Capturing decisive moments is paramount. Every single year, every single month, every single shoot that I've done boils down to the ability to capture decisive moments, because that's what it's really all about. These next two little line items here, removing blinders of habit and eliminating preconceived notions, has everything to do with being creative. For example, how many of you are wedding photographers? Okay? How many of you work in the same damn locations week after week, or maybe 4 or 5 times a year? I mean, it happens, does it not? I'm at the Four Seasons constantly. This Sunday, I'm at the Rittenhouse Hotel. I work there probably 7, 8, 9 times a year. But the truth is, I try to forget about each and every single time that I've worked there. Why? Because if I go in thinking about the same locations, or if I go in thinking about the fact, oh, let's see, at 4:30 in that month, I know that the sun is going to hit the west corner of the square with no problem. I can make pictures there. Or by that statue, I know there's going to be some good pictures. Or inside here, if I have the bride and groom stand over here, what's happening is, if I do this, inside my head I'm building a formula. There's a template, there's a recipe. And I want to get rid of this recipe, this habitual image-making mentality. I want to erase that. The preconceived notions, that's a little something different. Quick story. I was going to Liberia, West Africa, back in 1989. I was 27. I was a snot-nosed photojournalist with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I was being sort of interrogated, if you will, by our editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer magazine. His name's Tom Graylish. He's a real mentor of mine. He sat me down and he said, Cliff, what are you going to do out there? Talk to me about what's going to happen in Liberia. And I want to, he was looking for logistics. I'm sitting here and I thought he was talking about pictures. So I said, well, let's see. I'm doing a story on Operation Smile, an organization that does surgery on children and other people with birth defects and deformities. Great organization. It's grown quite a bit since '89. But yeah, Tom, I see pictures of this little girl with a cleft lip and cleft palate, and she's real sad, and then after the surgery, she's just, this bubbly kid and whatnot. And I see pictures in the village of her, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? He's like, I'm asking you about logistics. You're thinking about pictures. You're thousands of miles away, and you're thinking about what pictures you're going to make. And I said, well, yeah. He's like, there's no way that you can think about pictures. You're not there. If you're thinking about these pictures now, or if you have an assignment this weekend, and you're thinking about what pictures you're going to make there, there's no way that you're going to keep your mind open to possibilities once you get there and see the situation and the environment that you're going to be in. So if you have these preconceived notions, if you say to yourself, wow, I've never shot at that venue before, I'm really looking forward to it. It's got that great fountain in front, and it's got this light and that light. But if you think about this picture now, that is the picture you're going to make. Maybe. But that's about it. You're not going to open up your mind to the other possibilities that are around you. So these are essential in the creative process. Essential. And avoid the formula. Avoid being formula-driven. Don't just do the same damn thing over and over at each wedding. Just because you know it works doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do each and every time. Otherwise, you're going to stay stale. It's happened to all of us. We're going to do the thing that works, the thing that we're comfortable with, but then step out of that box, step out of the comfort zone, okay? It's very, very important. And I scare a lot of moms because I'm a little impromptu, a little too impromptu for their taste sometimes. And, I'm having a consult with the mom and the bride, and they might say to me, so tell me what's going to happen on the wedding day. Where are you going to take my daughter? And I'll sit there and I'll say, I have no idea. And I'll say, you've heard of the man with the plan? I'm the man with no plan. I got no plan, lady. And she gets a little uneasy, but I explain to her, if I sit there and I have this plan and I say I'm going to take you to City Hall and I'm going to take you to this place, I'm going to take you to this place, well, all I really do is I go hunting for light. I go on a light hunt, searching for that best light to put the couple in the best lighting situations, best compositional scenarios, and then capture them interacting in that situation instead of the picture in front of this, the picture in front of that. Otherwise, there's just snapshots. The creative process, just let it come to you. And here's a couple other little details. And I discussed this with some people that have been shooting for a long time. I'm still searching for the photographic holy grail. And to get very personal with you, I'm never satisfied. There's days that I think to myself, my work sucks. And I think to myself, I'm never going to make, you too, right? I'm never going to make another picture again. And I really am searching for that. And here's my goal. If I can make 1 or 2 images in a given year, I think I've had a pretty good year. And somebody might say, well, 1 or 2 pictures in a year, this guy must suck. But the truth is, 1 or 2 pictures, if I'm striving for that, and I can make that happen, then the level of consistency in the other weddings, in the other days, is going to be pretty high. I'm pushing myself really hard to make that happen, those 1 or 2 pictures. So the way the creative process works with me anyway, is I'm busting ass each and every wedding. So what motivates me, and I've been asked this question, how do you stay motivated doing 50, 60 weddings a year? Well, I wake up in the morning and I say, today I'm gonna make a picture. Saturday, I'm gonna make a picture. Sunday, I'm hoping to make a picture, one at a time. Does it happen? Usually no. I'll make some solid images for the blog, great images for the client. They'll love what I do, but in order for me to love it, it's got to have great light and a great moment, and it's not always there. And here's the dirty little secret that other people aren't going to tell you. We're only as good as our clients. So if the client, if it's dead groom walking, or, you know, Betty boring, it's going to be pretty damn hard to make creative images. Stay consistent. It's the consistency of the level of work that sets one photographer apart from the other. It's not the pretty pictures, it's the moments. So that's the creative process for me. Your first 10,000 photographs are your worst, right? That's what Cartier-Bresson said, but he never shot digital, right? It's probably your first million, most likely. Here's a few images that shape my style, and I'm going to go through this. There's simplicity and decisive moments and interesting light and all these wonderful things here. And it all helped me evolve. I was walking through Rittenhouse Square one day, and I've worked there so many times. And frankly, I've never seen this light again. So when I saw it, I said to myself, this is pretty cool. You got to make a picture here. And I stopped the bride, and you know, it wasn't exactly posed, but it wasn't exactly candid either. And I wouldn't describe my style as purely photojournalistic, by the way. It's an artistic interpretation of the day with the best of the traditional elements mixed in. That's really kind of what I do. But this light, very, very early on in my career, really was something that I was very excited about, because I learned that there's texture, dimension, and mood that I can create with interesting light. One of the first weddings I did, I learned that shooting into light can also create this even indoors. The other was outside. But here, as you can see, the little girl looking at her aunt who's getting married, and that's where the hand is coming in from. That's her aunt getting married. That's the bride. And I shot directly into that light. I still have detail in the face. It's not completely silhouetted. It's not completely blown out. But shooting into this light allowed me to understand that breaking the rules so that the light is not just to my back and falling directly on the subject, similar to this image, it creates texture and dimension. And I really enjoyed the fact that I can play with light like this. It was essential to the creative process for me. Another image that really struck me and developed my style and the creative process was this image here. And everybody does the walking picture with the bride and groom. It's no revelation to do such. So I had the bride and groom, and they're walking towards me, and I'm snap, 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 snap. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw this couple. And they were on this bench. And one couple, and they were like, hey, baby, remember when we were like that years ago, you know? And I just saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I just stepped aside and let it happen. And I got this in one frame. The juxtaposition, to me, was something very special. And a friend of mine complimented me. He said he thought it looked like a Duino image. And Duino is one of my all-time heroes. Photographically, he is wonderful. And I could see it, and I was pretty proud of it. So I also understood early on that the photojournalistic process needs to be incorporated into my work. And I've been a photojournalist for a long time. I shot 6,000 assignments with the Philadelphia Inquirer. I think that qualifies me as being someone experienced in photojournalism. But as my mom said, you can take the boy out of the Bronx, but you can't take the Bronx out of the boy. And what I mean by that is, you can take me out of photojournalism, but you can't take the photojournalism out of me. While I'm a wedding photographer now, first and foremost, there is a photojournalistic aspect, big time, to what I do. This image here, it's direct, harsh light, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in June. So when I took this picture and I saw the results, I said, you know what, heck, I can make it work at 2 o'clock in June. As wedding photographers, we all know, and I'm gonna do another Kelby training class on harsh light and how to deal with that. We all know that you can't pick your times of day. You can't tell mom, Mrs. Smith, I'm really sorry, but you can't have your ceremony at 11 a.m. because I'm not taking pictures of your daughter at 12:30. I mean, you just can't do it. So if you have to shoot at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the summer, tough. You got to deal with it, but learn how to do it. These are just some other images early on in my career, again, that really helped develop my style and helped develop the creative process for me. Love this picture. It's right after they saw each other for the first time. It's 1:30 in the afternoon in the month of May. And again, it's real. The moment's real. What is not completely candid is the fact that I put them in the situation. I put them in the best lighting situation and the best compositional scenario and just let it happen from there. This is the holy grail of light. For me, this is what I try to do. Take your subject, put it between you and the sun, backlighting them beautifully, expose properly. Okay, we'll talk about exposures in a second. And you get that beautiful rim. This is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The other was about 2 or 3. Same principle of sort, except now when the sun gets a little lower in the sky, I can start to use this light directionally. When it gets a little lower in the sky, it gets a little bit softer and a little bit buttery, and I can use it. Anytime light. I can make this picture anytime. Anytime. With a dark enough background and directional light. Okay? You can find good pictures anywhere. You can even find good pictures in New Jersey. Okay? This quote from Elliot Erwitt inspired the heck out of me, and this was taken at the Borgata Hotel. So this was, incidentally, when I was working at the Philadelphia Inquirer, we had this up in our darkroom, because I worked in the South Jersey bureau of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And so we used to kid ourselves, there's no good pictures in Jersey. And one of my friends found this quote, all right, and told a friend of mine who kept bitching and moaning about not being able to make pictures, shut the hell up and make pictures. Because even Elliot Erwitt says that. The thing that's important to know is that you never know. You just sort of feel on your way, and the creative process works that way. Remember I said you never have a plan. Never have a plan. This image here, one of my favorite images from '06, during a ceremony, and someone actually said to me at a seminar, so when was that? Was that afterwards and you kind of set that up? And hell no. This is during the actual ceremony. And what I had trouble with, and the reason why I use that quote, you're always sort of feeling your way, if you notice there's a light behind the bride. And I was having trouble because I was bobbing, I was weaving, and I kept getting flare because that light was so hot and so harsh because it's illuminating the Virgin Mother, okay? Nice Jew boy, I know the terms, okay? So the light was giving me a little bit of a hard time, but once I bobbed and I weaved and I felt my way and I blocked that light with my subject, I got this beautiful rim of light. And I made one of my very favorite images of that year. So you just never know. It could happen on an image that's completely unexpected. Hey, I made a picture. I made a picture. Quick story about making a picture. I'll be really brief. This may get cut out, may not, but I want to tell you this story. I have a consult with this bride. New consult. She comes into the studio and she says to me, she asked me the question, very legitimate. Cliff, you shoot so many weddings. How do you stay motivated? And I told her what I told you earlier. I get up in the morning and I say, today, I'm going to make a picture. And I motivate myself to do the best damn job that I can. Not really for you, but for me. I work my ass off to make great pictures. But I do it because not only do I want to please you, I want to please myself. That's important. I take pride in it. Later on in the day, she had a meeting with the videographer that she was going to choose. Videographer calls me and said, dude, what the hell happened? The first half of the meeting, you had her. And then she says to me, I was going to hire him, but I don't want just one picture at my wedding. I'm not kidding. True story. So I told that same story the next week and I booked her. So she got it, the other bride didn't. It's a true story. So made a picture that day. Jay Maisel, inspiring to me. I watched him about 6, 7 years ago give a seminar, and he said, take a look at what you're looking at. And I said, take a look at what you're looking at. I said it like 3 or 4 times in my head. Christ, isn't the essence of what we do that quote as photographers? And it was mind-blowing to me. And then for about 6 months afterwards, it was in my head, take a look at what you're looking at. And it inspired me to make a picture I'll show you after this quote, because famous philosopher Yogi Berra said, you can observe a lot just by watching. And inspired me to make this, where I saw this puddle, and I saw a reflection, and I thought, I gotta be able to use that somehow. And I kept looking at it, and looking at it, and looking at it again, and it came to me. As soon as I squatted down, right, I had my 7200 on me. Actually, at the time, it was the old 80-200. And I was able to make this picture work because I was observing and I was taking a look at what I was looking at. Made this directly after. Now, it was raining. Notice, it ain't a nice day. Not even a little bit. But we still made it work. We had to deal with it. If I knew how to take a good photograph, I'd do it every time doing OSET. So when some people say to me, you know, what's your f-stop or what's it? And I say to them, I said it earlier, I don't know. People get a little bit upset with me. Cliff, what's your exposure compensation there? I have no idea. What f-stop do you use? You know what I say? 6. You know, and they're like, I don't have a 6 on my list. Those Nikon guys, I don't know. All right? I really believe there's things nobody would see if I didn't photograph them. Deanna Arbus. Get yourself a Deanna Arbus book or learn a little bit about her, because she is an inspiring woman. Was. And made that picture. No one would have seen this if I didn't see it, if I didn't photograph it. I saw it clear across the room. Okay? This was a New Year's Eve wedding several years ago. This is 11 years ago. This is still one of my favorite images. Still stands the test of time for me. Nothing special about it photographically. It's direct flash before I learned how to use a speed light. Direct flash, on camera, film, blah, blah, blah. But I saw it. It was late in the evening. It's got to be 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm having a Coke. I'll never forget it. And I saw it. And I almost did a spit take. I was like, put the thing on, and I probably knocked over another little old lady on my way to get this picture. And you know those little stupid circly thingies at weddings? You know what I mean by a circly thingy? Because it's one of those things where a little circle develops, and you hear hooting and howling, oh, go, you go, girl. You know, Betty's in the house. And so I go over, I run over, and I get in the circly thingy, and I wait. I see this moment. And I probably shot 4 or 5 different images of this. And she saw her granddaughter who was dancing in the middle of the circly thingy, and her face lit up. And the juxtaposition between and the eyes worked for me. And I still love it. And it's hanging in my studio. And you know, it's the first damn picture people go up to. And I leave people alone in my studio just for the sake of leaving them alone and not being on, you know, giving them space when they come into the studio. And I always hear laughter. And I always know which picture they're on. So my friend Joe Busink, when judging this image years ago in the humor category at WPPI, he stopped the competition and he said, you know, can I make a comment? And he's Joe Busink. He can do whatever the hell he wants, right? Won a million awards. And he says, if you take a look at this picture long enough, you'll see an old lady. So, creative process. Slow shutter. Letting things happen in the background. All of these images just developed. These are not great images by any means, but very, very early on in my career, it really helped develop my creativity and my ability to see light. Here's how you develop your style, okay? First and foremost, if I could put one slide up right now to develop your creative process, that's it. If you don't know thy gear, you cannot create. Because if you're fumbling with the camera, if I'm going to take your picture and I go snap, and I chimp. You know what chimping is, right?
Yes.
All right? And I look and I go, ooh! So I'm sitting there, now you know what chimping is. There's a reason for it. So I go and I take the picture and I look real quick and I'm like, oh, wait a second. I adjust my shutter speed. My f-stop's now. What the hell's my ISO? If I have to sit and worry about all that, that ever happen to you? It's like, oh, my exposure's off. But then you're not composing. You're not thinking about the light. You're not thinking about making an image. You're thinking about taking a picture, but you're not thinking about image making because you're thinking about your damn camera. So if you can't instinctively create the image, then you need to learn more about your gear. It's as simple as that. How would you like a dentist? He knows how to put a good filling in, eventually. But if he's poking around, I know I can get this filling right. But I don't know if I can get it on the first try.
Oh, he wouldn't be my dentist.
Well, then maybe you won't be somebody's photographer, since you just said he wouldn't be my dentist. You see what I'm saying? You really have to make it instinctive. It has to be innate. Okay, it must be. They asked me, how do you make your pictures? You know, I was puzzled. I said, I don't know, it's not important. Because Cartier-Bresson, damn, that camera was instinctive to him. And imagine the piece of crap he was using back then. Didn't exactly have dynamic range. The ISOs of those films, who the hell knows what they were? I'm not even educated enough to know what they were. So he knew his gear. He knew his gear. Developing your own style. The technical elements must be innate. Here's a key. Decide what you like and dislike and take it from there and allow others to inspire you. I mentioned this in a seminar earlier. If you're looking at other websites and other blogs, stop for a little bit. Everyone really should take a month or two off from looking at other blogs, except for mine, okay? And then, instead of emulating, be inspired by. I'm inspired by other things. I love TV, I love films. The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, my God. The wedding scene from The Godfather, okay? Elle magazine. Jim Jarmusch films. I don't know if anybody even knows who he is. The composition of that man is incredible. Raging Bull. Scorsese. Anybody like Mad Men?
Yes, love it.
How many shots of Don Draper smoking that friggin' cigarette? They're perfect. The lighting is perfect. Be inspired by that. That sparks the creative process. So when you see something like that and you say, damn, I have an idea. I want to use that in my portrait photography, my wedding photography, my anything photography. So films, TV shows, great stuff. Lost, right? For God's sakes, did they have perfect backlighting 100 hours a day in Hawaii? That's where they filmed it, but yeah. So gain inspiration from other sources and build on those ideas, okay? And take it from there. Talk about style. 1 photo out of focus is a mistake. 10 photos out of focus is an experimentation. 100, now, that's a style, you know? Read that quote. Just read it, just enjoy it. Because there's nothing that I can say to improve upon it. You all know who George Eastman was. You know, that little Kodak company. Most important quote that you can possibly read in photography, because it's all about light, every bit of it. There's no rules for good photographs. There's only good photographs. No rules. I think I break some rules. There's no question about it. Here's accurate exposures. Let's talk about how to achieve that for a minute. Well, let's put this up here. Manual or aperture priority? Which do I use? Yes. You know, there's no right or wrong. So if someone says to you, in order for you to be a professional photographer, Cheryl, you must use manual. Have you ever heard that? Did you ever have the inkling, well, if I don't know how to use a camera manual, if I can't use it in manual, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'll never make good pictures. Nonsense. I use aperture priority much of the time. I use manual mode much of the time, the right mode for the right situation. When the exposure setting is consistent, I'm loving manual because I don't have to move it. But if the situation is changing, and by the way, I use matrix metering most of the time, almost all the time. I don't feel the need, nor do I want to take the time to spot meter off of a subject's face. So I'm estimating the scene, and I'm going to talk about estimation in just a second, because I'm going to talk about exposure compensation, okay? Why and when. Here's the general rules. The darker the overall scene, the more you compensate under. The brighter the overall scene, the more you compensate over. Here's the visual I'd like to present to you, okay? If I went behind this black curtain there, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I stuck my head through a black curtain. All you get is my head. And I was to take a picture with a, let's say I had a 24-70. And I'm not even going to get into the different lenses that need to be used, because 24-70 is, will limit your creative process if that's all you use. I go ahead and I take the picture in matrix metering, 0.0 exposure compensation. Take the picture. What's going to happen to my face? It's going to be overexposed. The reason is, and the simple reason is that the meter is saying, holy crap, it's pretty dark. We need to slow the shutter down. Remember, I'm an aperture priority. We need to slow the shutter down in order for us to get a proper exposure, because the situation is dark. And in doing so, it's going to basically blow my face to smithereens and make it too bright. So we have to lie to the camera, because the camera wants to make everything what? 18% gray. Do we live in a friggin' 18% gray world? No. This carpet is pretty close to 18% gray. I wish the whole world was 18% gray. We would have no exposure issues, ever. Just use automatic modes all the time. But we can't do that. So we have to predict the scene. So what I would do is I would predict the scene, and I would say, okay, I'm going to try, just for starters, minus 1 7/10. So that's minus 1.7 in my Nikon. I bet you that would get pretty close to nailing it. And then I would take the picture, I would chimp quickly. If I missed, I would adjust from there and get it on the second try. But it's a quick chimp. So it's take the picture, boom, bring the camera. I might have nailed it on the first one. Usually I do, because I can predict the situation before I take the picture. That's the key. Just as the white bed sheet, if I stuck my head through, and I know that you've all done this. You've taken a picture of the groomsmen in their black tuxes. You've taken the picture, and you're in automatic mode, and the faces are blown out, correct? You know this has happened in situations. Just like the bridesmaids and the bride, they're in light colored dresses. You take the picture and their faces are underexposed. Well, if I've got the white bed sheet, stuck my head through, I know that the camera's going to say, we need to speed the shutter up because there's all this light, and it's going to underexpose the face. So before you take that photograph, once again, in matrix metering, hit the exposure comp dial. I would turn it to the left on my Nikon, telling the camera to slow the shutter a little bit and get a proper exposure. So exposure compensation is my way of shooting manual. I'm predicting it, and I'm riding the exposure comp dial, just up and down, predicting the scene before I shoot it. This is what I mean by the technical aspects must be innate. Okay? Make it instinctive, and also, don't forget to change back for the next scene. Otherwise, you're going to screw yourself, and you're going to be, why is this over? Why is this under? All right? And the question hasn't been asked, histograms. Are they important? Not to me. I don't have these nice little smooth humps of a histogram. It doesn't look like a nice camel. Mine are jagged, ugly ass histograms, really ugly. So if I looked at a histogram, I'm going to think I missed every time. Look at the histogram. Look at that guy's histogram. He sucks. But the way I use light, I'm going to clip my highlights, and all kinds of stuff's going to happen the way I use light. It's very different. The picture is good or not from the moment it was caught in camera. I love this quote because everything that we do, everything that we understand about photography leads to making moments. That's what it's about. All about the moments. I want to share some with you. Wonderful story here. This bride, her name is Ro, she called me 3 days before the wedding and told me that Grandmom is not going to be able to make it to the wedding. Grandmom's the closest person in the world to her. Cliff, before you take me to see Joel, her husband, can we stop at the hospital? And I said, well, of course. I knew I was going to make something there. They're sharing a rose, sharing the smell of the rose that's in her bouquet because she can't make it. I was really moved to tears, as I am sometimes. You ever get that feeling when you take the picture and you get the goosebumps and you get the chills and you say to yourself, holy shit, I just made a picture. I made something. You know the feeling, and that's why you're here. That's why you're photographers. And that's why I'm still doing this after 29 years. God's honest truth. Whenever I feel it, that goosebumpy feeling, I shake a little bit, and I felt that here. And I feel it once or twice a year, like I said before. Grandmom died 2 weeks later, for real. Ro called me when she got back from a honeymoon. This photograph, she said, they weren't done yet, they weren't processed yet. Do you have anything? I sent her this picture. It's in the casket. It's in the casket. 5 minutes before the groom is about to walk down the aisle. Now, if I didn't understand light, and I didn't see this instinctively, he was only there for 15 seconds. 50 millimeter lens on my, this was old, this is the D2X, okay? Couldn't go above 640, you know? God, 640, I mean, that's unheard of now. Now I go to 6400, literally 10 times almost, figuratively speaking. Love this picture. This is just about 2 months ago. Just about 2 months ago. So if I didn't understand the creative process and I didn't understand my gear, I would have never made this picture this way. I might have used flash. What would that have done to this picture? Destroyed it. Because, I mean, the bags under this man's eyes. This guy has had a life. He's a Holocaust survivor. And I think I made a nice moment here. I got chills when I shot this. What do you think my exposure compensation was there? I was probably -3 stops in order to capture this, at least. There was just an overhead can. And I like the fact that he's got the bags under his eyes here. It makes it even more dramatic. So I wouldn't want to put any fill flash from the front side. This is in a bedekin in a Jewish ceremony. And I was able to control the creative process a little bit here. And let me explain. I was able to control where the light was going to be omitted from. Because beforehand, they were setting up the bedekin chairs. And they were set up in the wrong place, a dark-ass area, and I did not want to use it. So I set up the chairs near some window light. And then everything throughout had this beautiful side light. And I like to shoot directly into light, as some of you may know. And I made that one there. Mom's reaching out for the groom. Bride is just crying her eyes out. The moments are what it's all about. Exposure compensation, again, probably down a little bit because I don't want to blow those highlights. I'm in aperture priority and I'm working it, riding that exposure compensation dial. That's the second he saw her, and that's the second they all saw them. They all saw him. Every single face is making some type of emotional reaction. This is why I do what I do. This is the creative process for me. Essentials of creativity. 5 minutes before he's about to walk down the aisle, this is in a very old church in Playa del Carmen. And I just saw this light. Took my 7200, and I had to wait because he didn't go back there. He moved, and I'm sitting, and I'm waiting. I might have waited 2-3 minutes. That's a long time when you think about it, just sitting there waiting for something. And I made a few frames. And again, exposure comp dial, way down, way down. So love that picture, actually. Nice moment between little girl and granddad. Granddad was the father of the bride, and he had to control this kid the whole time, right? Studying the relationship between the granddaughter and the grandfather. I predicted something was going to take place there. And these last two images, remember I said earlier, you're always sort of feeling your way, you just never know. And don't preconceive ideas. And don't use blinders of habit. Well, they did their recessional. And they grabbed some flowers and they walked right out the back of the church. And I had no idea where the hell they were going. They didn't discuss anything with me, nothing. But instead of doing what some photographers might do, which is wait around, because I was going to do some family photos in the church, instead of waiting for them to come back, I had my 7200 on me, okay, another body with me as well, with another lens on it, and I ran out and walked out after them. I had no idea where they were going, but they walked out, they're outside, walk across the driveway, walk into this field, and they go walking into this cemetery. And I said, oh crap, where are they going? Obviously I knew they were going to pay respects to somebody. And I was like 50 yards this way. I didn't know where they were stopping, and I don't want to be on top of them. So finally they stopped here, made this picture here, which I like very much. Then I made that one. He broke down. This won the Grand Award for Photojournalism 2 years ago at WPPI. And that's his grandparents. They raised him. This is why I'm still doing weddings. And this is what the creative process is about for me. Because honestly, if it makes you laugh, if it makes you cry, if it rips your heart out, that's a good picture. Thanks for coming. Well, here we are. Scriv dropped me in the middle of nowhere. And as wedding photographers, as you all know, every week could be different. I've never seen this location before, and it's kind of a drill that we go through each and every week. And well, if you remember, Dan Arbus once said, the thing that's important to know is that you never know. You're always sort of feeling your way. I mentioned that before in the lesson. And this is the perfect scenario that we can sort of apply that philosophy. And I'm going to try to make pictures out of thin air. And that's really the essence of what we do. We make something from nothing. And that's what Dan Arbus was really talking about. You just never know what's going to be in front of us. And here we go. You know, Dorothea Lange once said, the camera is an instrument that teaches people to see without a camera. I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes in all of photography, because who hasn't been outside on an October afternoon? It's 5, 6 o'clock, golden sunshine drenching every scene that you look at, and you don't have your camera. Well, it's happened to me, and frankly, I don't need a camera. I see in focal lengths. I see in apertures. I might just walk around here and I see maybe a bride right here with my 70-200 racked out at 200, and I'm using the Spanish moss there as bouquet. As I look around, if you pan with me, and I might see this area here with my 200, maybe using this area here as a leading line along with the fence, and my bride and groom might be out there. Here's an interesting situation here where I've got water which is much brighter, and again, with a longer focal length, maybe I'll go vertical this time, and I'll have my bride and groom interacting right down in that area, juxtaposed against the water behind them. There's so many different things that you can do without a camera. You just don't need one, but you have to understand the way it works. The camera teaches you how to see without a camera. As I said earlier, Scriv dropped me off in a place I've never seen before. And as a wedding photographer, quite frankly, I'm not trying to make the Mona Lisa. That's going to be impossible. So really what I'm trying to do is produce an eclectic mix of photographs in this very small vicinity, but I'm trying to get as many photographs as possible in the shortest time span allowed. So as I said earlier, I like this image here with these leading lines. We've got Ashley, our model, waiting for us down there. I love the way these lines right here work. I'm going to squat down, use these with my 70-200. I'm at 2.8, and I've got my aperture priority mode in gear here. I'm going to take a few frames, check my exposures, and actually, I've made a pretty decent image here. As I said earlier, we're trying to make as many different images as possible. We just shot Ashley, just sort of somewhat static on this little path here. Another way to get another type of image is just have your couple or your bride herself just walk towards the camera. I don't need her to be camera aware. I don't need her to look at the camera. I just need her to move. So we get a little movement, we get these lines going. And again, this is in addition to the static image that we just made. For those of you that might be thinking, well, where's the reflector, so on and so forth. Right now the light's pretty flat out here. Now, see, now the sun just came out. But right now it's in and out. I don't really use a reflector. It's not really for me. I expose properly in my camera. I expose for the face. And I'm not too worried, nor do I have the time to worry about a reflector all the time. So you'll never see me using a reflector. So right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to shoot Ashley walking right towards me. I've got my 7200. I'm at 2.8. I love the look here. And I'm just going to fire off a few frames. I'm varying my focal lengths to include that brush on the left. And I think we made some decent images. Again, what we're looking to do is get content first. We need to please our clients. We can't make the best possible pictures of our career with every single frame. Eclectic mix. You know what, Ash? All I want you to do right now, I just want you to turn around. I love how that veil is spread out just a little bit. I've got some beautiful backlight coming through that veil now. And I just want you to just walk right away from me just for a moment. And this way, yeah, because you know, in every situation, mom wants to see a shot of the back of the gown. This is the perfect opportunity. So just exactly what you're doing, just walk right away and walk right back towards that tree. All right, and I'm going to get real low here, and just keep going. Good, Ashley. You can stop right there. Just a couple steps to your left. I'm sorry, my left now. Beautiful. Good. And nice and slow, walking right towards me now. Good, you can stay right there for a moment. Beautiful. Gorgeous, thank you so much, that looks great. I've got this beautiful backlight here. The way this veil is just lit up beautifully. I'm exposing for her face, okay? That's really the key element here. I don't care if you're in manual exposure, I don't care if you're in aperture priority. All we're really thinking about is the face. This veil, it's a highlight. It's going to get blown out. That's what veils do. So don't worry about it. Oh, histograms, remember them? We don't need no stinking histograms. My histograms, if you ever look at my work, my histograms are going to go like this, because I'm using so much different light at all times. I might silhouette her in the next frame, so then my histogram is going to look completely different than a shot like this. It's going to look just as weird, just as cockeyed, just as awkward, but the histogram in my work, I'm never going to get that perfect little hump in the middle. Great shot. I love the backlight here. The other thing that was very important about this particular shot is that it was juxtaposed against a darker background. If it was a bright sky, we wouldn't even see these highlights. They'd be gone. They'd be lost. We can see them because of the exposure variance between these highlights and that dark tree. That's what we're looking for. One of the other points I'd like to make, and this happens to me fairly often. Whenever I work with a second shooter, they're excited to work with me, they're excited to shoot, and everybody likes to shoot. However, shoot with a purpose. Whenever you see me photograph, I'm trying to see three-dimensionally. I talk about it a lot in my workshops and seminars. Seeing three-dimensionally is so important because we're determining our foreground, our subject, and our background. In this particular situation, we didn't have a whole lot of foreground. We had Ashley, we had the beautiful backlight and the beautifully backlit veil, and then we had our dark tree in the distance. We had foreground, we had background, or subject and background. If there was something in the foreground, we would have worried about it. But I'm seeing three-dimensionally. Here's my point. Let's say Ashley moved over a little bit, and I had that dead tree in the background. Wouldn't look so hot. So instead, What I do, because I'm using a nice long lens, I'm making sure that my angles of view are what they need to be to obtain proper framing. Seeing three-dimensionally is going to eliminate those stupid trees that you don't see until you download your card and you look at it on your monitor and you say to yourself, why didn't I see that tree, Ashley? Ashley, why didn't you tell me about that tree?
I was too busy being pretty.
I was too busy thinking about the beautiful light coming through the veil to even think about the stinking tree. So what I really need to start doing is seeing three-dimensionally. If I moved Ashley somewhere else, I'm going to make sure that my background is clean, is interesting, and is not taking away from my subject. If I had to epitomize my overall approach, my overall style, I couldn't depict it any better than the way this situation is unfolding right here. I'm in Florida. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That sun is blazing, but I'm making pictures. As wedding photographers, we don't choose our times of day. We don't choose our brides and grooms. We don't choose anything. Oftentimes, we don't even choose locations. But in this situation, we've got harsh light, beautiful bride, a place that I've never seen before in my life. But what is the one common denominator in every single situation? We've got that blazing sun. We've got blazing sun in Philadelphia. We've got blazing sun everywhere. And if you don't think that you can make pictures in this blazing sun, you're dead wrong. The secret, keep your subject between you and the sun and then expose properly. We've talked a little bit about that. We're going to talk about it a whole lot more, but I just want you to see how beautiful she looks here. Now, there are a couple of little highlights here and whatnot. That's not a big deal to me. I'm looking at properly exposed face, beautifully lit veil, but watch what happens if we don't keep our subject between us and the sun. I'm going to ask Scrib in a minute to move his camera so that we can see how harsh that light will become. And you'll see why it's so important to keep that little sequence, that subject, sun, camera. So keep the subject between you and the sun and don't vary that, and you can make pictures in harsh light too. Case in point of what I was just referring to with regard to making sure that our subject is between us and the sun. The sun is now to my and Ashley's right, okay? You can see the ridiculous shadows here. This light is so harsh. I have to wait until later on in the day, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, in order to use this light. Eventually, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to get soft. It's going to get buttery. But right now, it's incredibly harsh. I would not want to use this. I would not want to present this to my client. I just don't think it's very flattering whatsoever. You can see the uneven nature of the way the light is falling. It's just no good. It's unphotographable in my opinion. A few minutes ago, I was talking about the importance of making an eclectic array of images. And again, we're dropped off in surroundings that are very unfamiliar with me, but the first thing that I do, I look around and I try to observe where the light's falling. When I was back where the camera was, I immediately saw this area right here that Ashley's standing in, and I saw a silhouette. Why did I see a silhouette? You're asking me, where is the silhouette coming from? Well, Ashley is in an area of shadow. I'm in the sun. To get a silhouette, we need a tremendous variance in exposure value between where our subject might be and our background. Right now, Ashley is in shadow. Our water is several stops different than the exposure that's on Ashley right now. So I see this, and the camera cannot, and you'll see the image in a moment. You'll see a silhouette of Ashley and a nice little arch created vertically with this tree, the tree behind there with the moss coming down, and the vertical line of that tree right there, along with this area. These things right here. See, now I'm silhouetted. Hi, Ash. How you doing? And I'm going to show you how this is made. That's great. Good. Now, automatically, whenever I want to do a silhouette, I'm an aperture priority, I take my exposure compensation and I just dump it. I go way down. Where? I spin the dial. I press the button, I spin it a few, and I just want to make sure that my silhouette is dark enough. The other thing that I like about my silhouettes is I like my backgrounds to have detail. You can still get a silhouette without detail in the background, but it's so much more defined when you have detail in the background. And the only way to do that is to either expose for it properly or even go a little bit further under with the exposure, just like I'm doing here. Right now, I'm starting at about 1.7 under on the exposure compensation. I've got a nice vertical. I'm not even racked out fully at 200. I'm going to drop my ISO a little bit more. I've just made a pretty decent picture. There's one other point about a silhouette that I'm going to show you in just 1 second. When doing a photograph like this, or any photograph for that matter, one of the things I want you to remember, again, about seeing three-dimensionally is horizons dissecting body parts. In this situation, Ashley's neck is being chopped off by the horizon behind us. I don't know where it is in relation to me. She's probably taller than I am. Well, anybody over 5'7" is taller anyway. But quite frankly, we need to adjust our height. And if Scrib wants to stand up a little bit with that camera, the horizon line begins to go over her head, and all of a sudden, our composition snaps into place. Seeing three-dimensionally will get you there. Now, to elaborate what I was talking about earlier with regard to making sure that your subject is between you and the sun, it's very easy to look at this entire scenario and say, wow, look how pretty this is. Well, pretty to the naked eye, possibly, but pretty to a camera sensor, definitely not. I'm looking here and I'm seeing the beautiful tree there, a beautiful pasture behind, and it's pretty nice to the naked eye, but if you look closely at the shadows on Ashley's face, and Ashley, just come this way and then this way, you can see that those shadows are pretty nasty. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is not a picture. Put the camera down and find a place that you can take the picture properly. This doesn't work. Every time I'm with an assistant that wants to take pictures, this is what they do. They say, oh, here we go. This is great. And they go, oh, this is beautiful. And then when I see it later, it's unusable because of this. You can make this picture, but make sure you're in the proper place. What would I do? Well, again, I would come around this way and the camera's over there, but I would move Ashley towards me, right there. I'd go back and I'd make the picture. If the entire scene made sense, and if I looked at it from a three-dimensional standpoint and it was a good photograph, I would go ahead and I would make it. But this, now the sun's out even more, you can see, guys, this is just not a picture. Remember earlier I was talking about all the different pieces of gear out there? There's so many different cameras to choose from right out there. I'm going to take a picture. Can you tell me which camera I just used? I don't think so. Right now, I've got a Nikon in my hand. This is a D3S. This is phenomenal. I love this camera. However, buying a Nikon doesn't make you a photographer. It makes you a Nikon owner. It doesn't matter what you're using out there. It's just a box that lets light in. So don't get hung up on all the gear salesmanship out there. Don't be hung up on getting the latest, greatest toy out there. Some of you, you might not need a D3S. Maybe you just need an entry-level camera to get you there. Because it doesn't matter. It's the skill set that's going to make you. It is definitely the Indian and not the arrow. One of the other elements of creativity that I'd like to discuss is composition. I said earlier that simplicity was one of the key elements for me. In this scenario, we've got a bunch of different situations here that we can use to be very creative within one scene. And if you can see, maybe with a 70 to a 105 range, I can get this entire scene in here and she can be framed by those tree limbs and even the underbrush here. And we've got a really interesting scene there. I can rack out to 200 and I can capture just Ashley with the trees in the distance behind her as well. The other thing that I like to do is I like to play around with my composition. Again, very, very simple, and the simplicity of the photograph is just plain as day, where maybe Ashley would just be in the lower left portion of my frame, right there, and I'll show you that image in a moment, and then I would kind of move it around from there. See the image, grab that image, and then work that situation from various reference points, from various compositions to get the best out of this scene. So I can pull out 3 or 4 different images from this particular scene just by standing right here, changing my focal lengths, and changing my vantage point with regard to what's in the scene.